I thought our marriage was perfect, until I saw her phone light up with a message from him. I miss you already, red heart, M. I asked her about it and she yelled, "You're paranoid." I installed cameras to feel safe and what I caught shocked me, her laughing with him, whispering, "You're everything he's not." I watched her bring him into our home, kiss him, pour wine, and I recorded everything. At her birthday dinner, I showed the footage to everyone. I calmly said, "The cameras you said were unnecessary turned out incredibly useful." She screamed, begged for forgiveness, but I whispered, "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, this was a choice." Repeated. Filmed. Remembered. Subscribe, like, comment and watch till the ending to share this interesting story to family and friends. The hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound in the room that night. David lay awake, staring at the dim glow of the alarm clock. 12:47 a.m. Clara wasn't home yet. She'd said she had a late meeting with a client on the island. It was the third late meeting this week. When the front door finally clicked open, David pretended to be asleep. Clara tiptoed in, her perfume sharp and unfamiliar, something floral, expensive, different from the lavender scent she'd always used. He watched her silhouette undress quietly and slide into bed. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand. A message lit up the screen for a split second. "Can't stop thinking about you, red heart, M." David's stomach turned. He shifted slightly. Clara tucked the phone under her pillow, pretending not to notice he'd seen. The next morning, over breakfast, he tried to sound casual. "Clara, you've been working a lot lately. Everything okay at the office?" She didn't look up from her toast. "You wouldn't understand, David. Real estate is competitive. Clients call at all hours." He nodded slowly. "Sure. Clients. Late night texts too?" Her head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "The one from last night," he said evenly. "From M. Clara's eyes flashed. "You went through my phone? Seriously, David? You're becoming paranoid." He sighed. "No, I didn't go through anything. I just saw it." She stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. "Maybe if you focused less on my phone and more on your work, you'd stop imagining things." She slammed the door behind her. David sat alone, the sound of her car fading. He wasn't angry, not yet. Just hollow. Something deep inside him shifted that morning, a quiet realization that the woman he trusted might be slipping away. That night, as he worked on a client's IT project from home, his thoughts kept drifting back to Clara. Every beep of his computer, every vibration from his phone made him tense. He began noticing patterns: calls she took outside, sudden silences when he entered a room, the new phone password she'd set. Still, he wanted to believe her. Until one evening when he saw her reflection in the mirror, smiling at her phone, typing fast, blushing like a teenager. That image broke something in him. Later, as they lay side by side in bed, Clara asleep, David stared at the ceiling, a quiet resolve building inside him. He wouldn't accuse her again. He wouldn't beg for the truth. He whispered softly to himself, "If there's something to see, I'll see it. With proof." The faint glow of her phone lit her sleeping face. He turned away, eyes cold now. Tomorrow he'd start upgrading their home security system. The next morning, David sat at his desk pretending to read emails, but his mind was elsewhere. Every word Clara had thrown at him, paranoid, insecure, imagining things, replayed in his head like static. He opened his drawer and stared at the small security catalog he'd gotten from work. He had once recommended home surveillance systems for corporate clients, never imagining he'd need one in his own living room. By noon he'd made up his mind. He drove to a tech supply shop downtown and bought 3 discrete motion-sensitive cameras, 2 Wi-Fi recorders, and a mini cloud storage plan. When the cashier asked, "You upgrading your home system, sir?" David just nodded. That evening, Clara breezed in, humming and tapping away on her phone. "You're home early," she said lightly. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," David replied, his tone calm. "Just thought I'd finally install those security cameras we talked about last year. Remember? You said it was unnecessary." Clara frowned, setting her bag down. "David, seriously? Who's going to rob us? This neighborhood's safe." He smiled faintly. "Better safe than sorry." She shrugged. "Fine. Just don't make the house look like a spy lab." She kissed him quickly and went upstairs to shower. As soon as the water ran, David began working. He placed 1 micro camera inside the wall clock in the living room, perfect view of the couch and entryway. Another went in the hallway smoke detector, and a third in the bedroom corner, disguised as an air freshener plug. His hands shook a little as he connected the feed to his phone. Within minutes, all 3 cameras came online, crisp, clear, streaming in real time. He sat in silence, testing each angle. The living room camera showed Clara's purse tossed on the sofa, her phone lighting up every few seconds. The screen flashed with a contact name, M. Work. Later that night they ate dinner quietly. David watched her scroll through messages between bites, occasionally smiling at the screen. "Who's M?" he asked casually. She froze for a second, then said, "A client from the new property listing." "Why?" He nodded, hiding his expression. "Just curious." Inside something hardened. Days passed. Clara's routines became more predictable: late viewings, urgent paperwork, drinks with colleagues. Each excuse was a repetition delivered too smoothly. Then one Wednesday afternoon, David was at work when his phone buzzed. Motion detected, living room. He opened the live feed. The camera showed Clara entering the house, smiling, not alone. Behind her was a man, tall, well-dressed, carrying a wine bottle. They laughed as she said, "Make yourself comfortable. He won't be home till 6. David's world tilted. He watched in stunned silence as they sat on the couch, the same couch he'd bought for their anniversary. He didn't move, didn't scream, didn't call. He just pressed record. The footage uploaded automatically to his private cloud. For the first time in weeks, David smiled, not from happiness but from clarity. "Now I know," he whispered. "And knowing is everything." David sat at his desk, eyes glued to the laptop screen. The feed from the living room camera flickered to life. His living room, the place he had built memories with Clara. Only now it looked like a set from someone else's life. Clara walked in first, smiling, her hair loose over her shoulders. Behind her, the man appeared, Michael, a colleague David vaguely recognized from photos Clara had mentioned at work. He held a bottle of wine, casual, confident, as if he owned the place. David swallowed hard. His hand hovered over the mouse. The motion sensor picked up every small gesture. Clara laughing, leaning closer, touching his arm. Michael kissed her cheek, a soft, lingering brush of lips that made David's stomach twist. He muted the volume but didn't look away. Every detail mattered. The wine glasses clinked, their hands met, and she whispered something that made Michael laugh, words David could only read on her lips. "You're everything he's not," she said, smiling. David felt a cold rage bubble up, tempered only by his control. He had evidence now. Concrete. Undeniable. Clara glanced at the clock and whispered, "He won't be home till 6. Michael nodded, smirking. They sat together, drinking, laughing, their faces inches apart. The intimacy was grotesque yet mesmerizing. David's heart ached as he watched his life unravel in real time. Later, Clara walked Michael to the door. They kissed again, lingering longer than necessary before Michael left. She closed the door softly and exhaled, not knowing David was already recording everything from his office, every movement, every expression. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. For weeks he'd suspected. Tonight he had proof. Proof that Clara wasn't just distant, wasn't stressed, she was choosing someone else. Yet, despite the anger and betrayal, he didn't feel impulsive. No shouting, no confrontation. That wasn't David. This wasn't the time for emotional fireworks. He had waited, watched, and recorded. The next steps required planning, precision, and timing. He downloaded the footage to a secure cloud account, labeled each clip by date and time. Every smile, every whisper, every kiss, meticulously catalogued. David's mind raced, plotting how to use the evidence. He imagined confronting Clara in the heat of the moment, but then shook his head. That was amateur. The satisfaction would be greater, perfect, undeniable, and public. That night, when Clara returned, David greeted her as if nothing had happened. "Dinner's ready," he said quietly. She smiled, hugging him tightly. "Long day at the office," she whispered. He kissed her forehead, whispering, "Rest. You've worked hard today." She nodded, unsuspecting. David lay awake after she went to bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was silent now, but he could feel the pulse of the plan forming. Every recorded frame, every piece of proof, was a step closer to truth, justice, and the ultimate exposure. He closed his eyes and whispered into the darkness, "Tomorrow we begin the next phase." For the next 2 weeks, David's life became a careful balance of routine and silent observation. At work, he smiled, joked, and attended meetings, but every thought revolved around the evidence he had gathered. Every kiss, every whispered promise, every subtle touch between Clara and Michael. At home he maintained the illusion of normalcy. Clara continued her charade, blissfully unaware that the cameras he had installed were documenting every interaction. She laughed at jokes he barely heard, made dinner, and occasionally rested her head on his shoulder, a mockery that burned David inside, yet he remained composed. David spent hours meticulously organizing the recordings. He labeled every clip by date, time, and room. He noticed patterns. Fridays were their most intimate evenings. Michael often arrived around 5:30 p.m., leaving before 7. David stored duplicates on encrypted drives, hidden in places only he knew. Then he planned the perfect setting for the culmination of his evidence: Clara's upcoming birthday dinner. Invitations had already been sent to friends, family, and colleagues. It was the perfect stage. All eyes would be on her, making her eventual exposure devastating and undeniable. He called his lawyer under the pretense of needing advice about a minor property dispute. In reality, he was confirming that using recorded evidence in the event of a divorce would be legally sound. The lawyer assured him it was admissible, provided it was obtained from his private property and not shared publicly online. David didn't panic. Every move had to be precise, controlled. No rash confrontations, no shouting matches. This was about strategy, timing, and ultimate impact. Meanwhile, Clara was oblivious. She spent the week obsessing over her dress, choosing a color, accessories, and even coordinating her hair with Michael, who had promised to come by for a quick drink. She had no idea David had been aware of every detail, every whispered conversation, every clandestine call. On the morning of the dinner, David rehearsed in his mind. He would begin with a speech, praise, smiles, a perfect toast to Clara's achievements. And then, the evidence. The projector, the screen, the video clips that showed her true loyalty, or rather, her betrayal. Every person at the dinner would see what he had seen for weeks in real time. He made one final check of the cameras. All were working perfectly, streaming to his phone. He minimized the feed, walking past the living room as if nothing was unusual. The apartment was spotless, dinner ready, wine chilled, the stage set for revelation. David paused in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie. His reflection stared back, calm, collected. His emotions were buried under layers of control. No outbursts, no tantrums. Only execution. This is the night everything changes, he whispered to himself. And nothing will ever be the same. For Clara, it would be a night of celebration. For David, it would be the night of truth, of reckoning. A carefully orchestrated unveiling of betrayal that no words could ever undo. The dining room glittered under the warm glow of chandelier lights. Friends, family, and Clara's colleagues filled the space, champagne glasses in hand, smiles everywhere. The atmosphere was one of celebration, laughter, and compliments. A perfect backdrop for the storm David had planned. Clara floated among the guests, radiant in her dress, her laughter light and careless. She was oblivious to the quiet tension building in David's mind. He stood near the projector screen, appearing calm and collected, sipping his glass of wine. Everyone expected a simple birthday toast. No one suspected what would follow. When the chatter began to settle, David raised his glass. "If I may have everyone's attention," he said evenly. The room hushed. Clara's smile faltered slightly, sensing the seriousness in his tone. He began softly, deliberately. "Clara has always been ambitious, charming, and beautiful. She's the heart of this room tonight, and we're here to celebrate her life, her achievements, and the person she is." Polite applause followed. Clara's cheeks flushed with pride. David paused, letting the attention focus entirely on him. Then, without a word of warning, he connected his laptop to the projector. The screen flickered, and suddenly the room's attention shifted to the living room footage, clear, vivid, undeniable. There was Clara at home, laughing intimately with Michael. Their hands touched, their faces leaned close, whispers exchanged. The wine bottle, the kisses, the casual comfort of betrayal, everything was visible. The room fell into stunned silence. Clara froze, her face draining of color. Her eyes darted to David, then to the screen. "David, stop it. Turn it off," she cried, rushing toward the projector. But it was too late. The footage continued, every detail playing out for friends, family, and colleagues. Shocked gasps filled the room. A few whispered to each other, unable to believe what they were seeing. David set down his glass, his voice calm, almost gentle. "Happy birthday, Clara. The cameras you dismissed as unnecessary turned out to be incredibly useful." Clara trembled, staring at him. How could you?" "See for yourself," he said, stepping back. He didn't shout. He didn't attack. He let the evidence speak. And speak it did. Michael, who had no idea this night existed, was absent, but the truth of his actions now dominated the room. Friends exchanged awkward glances. Colleagues whispered behind their hands. Clara's confident composure had shattered entirely. David walked past her calmly, heading toward the exit. His movements were deliberate, composed, leaving Clara exposed and humiliated, not with anger but with undeniable, unarguable truth. As he stepped out into the quiet night, he heard Clara's voice behind him, breaking in panic. "David." "Wait." He didn't stop. He didn't answer. Silence was his final statement. The truth had been revealed, and it was absolute. For the first time in weeks, David felt a strange calm settle over him. The burden of uncertainty, suspicion, and betrayal had been replaced by clarity and control. Tonight, nothing could undo what had been seen. Nothing could restore what had been broken. And that was exactly as it should be. The morning after the birthday dinner was eerily quiet. David sipped his coffee at the kitchen table, staring out at the garden, the hum of the city below muted by the memories of the night before. Clara was upstairs, crying in what could only be described as complete humiliation. Word had spread quickly. Family members called, some expressing shock, others veiled sympathy for Clara, though most subtly shifted their support toward David. Her colleagues avoided her, whispering in hallways, and a couple of clients canceled meetings once they learned of her indiscretions. Michael's wife, informed by a mutual friend, had filed for divorce within the day. The ripple effect of truth was relentless, just as David had known it would be. Clara eventually emerged from the bedroom hours later. Her once proud posture had collapsed into slumped shoulders. She avoided his gaze entirely. "David," she began, voice trembling. "Clara," he said evenly, keeping his tone measured, "a mistake is forgetting to call or being late once. What happened over the last month isn't a mistake, it's a choice. And choices have consequences." She sank into the couch, burying her face in her hands. "Please, I can explain. I made a mistake. I was lonely, stressed, it didn't mean anything." David shook his head. "You made it mean everything, Clara. Every time you lied. Every time you betrayed me. It's all recorded, all witnessed. No explanations can undo what you chose to do." She stared at him, eyes wide, desperate. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Please, don't leave me." David's expression softened just slightly, but his resolve remained. "I'm not leaving because I want revenge or to hurt you. I'm leaving because the trust is gone, and you've shown me the truth of your choices. That's enough." He filed for divorce quietly, ensuring everything was handled legally and efficiently. The process was smooth. Clara was cooperative but visibly shaken. David's calm demeanor throughout the proceedings became a topic among friends and family. No outbursts, no confrontations, only quiet dignity and control. Meanwhile, Clara's career faltered. Her credibility as a professional was questioned, her colleagues distant, her social standing damaged. For David, the victory was not in public humiliation alone, but in reclaiming his peace of mind. No more suspicion, no more lies. The chaos of betrayal had been replaced by certainty. Weeks later, he met with a divorce lawyer to finalize details. When asked if he wanted to pursue further damages or publicity, he simply shook his head. "No," he said. "I've seen enough. The evidence served its purpose. That's all I need." As he walked out of the office, David felt a rare sense of relief. The ordeal, painful as it had been, had ended with clarity. Betrayal had been exposed, justice quietly served, and life could now move forward, on his terms, with his dignity intact. In the quiet that evening, he glanced at the empty living room and whispered to himself, "I have my peace. That is more than enough." Months had passed since the birthday dinner. The storm of betrayal, exposure, and fallout had faded, leaving behind quiet streets, an empty home, and a sense of clarity David hadn't felt in years. He moved through his apartment methodically, tidying small corners, clearing old reminders of the life he and Clara had once shared. Photos that once held warmth now felt heavy with memory. He packed them away, storing only those that reminded him of his own growth, not shared love or pain. David joined a local support group for men navigating divorce and personal rebuilding. At first, he sat quietly, listening to stories of betrayal, loss, and fear. But over time, he began to speak, sharing his experiences not as someone seeking pity, but as someone who had learned to reclaim his life. There was relief in verbalizing his story, in connecting with others who had faced the same emotional turmoil. He also returned to passions he had shelved over the years: weekend hikes, painting, and volunteering at a local tech workshop for underprivileged youth. Each activity became a step forward, a reclaiming of time once lost to suspicion, heartbreak, and betrayal. At home, David finally disabled the security system he had once relied on to uncover Clara's infidelity. He paused for a long moment, staring at the cameras he had installed. Instruments of truth, yes, but also symbols of a period defined by distrust. He deleted the footage he had saved. Not because it didn't matter, but because keeping it meant holding on to the pain. "I've seen enough," he murmured. "The past is done." There were quiet evenings when he would sit on the balcony, watching the city lights shimmer against the horizon. He allowed himself to feel again, joy, hope, even anticipation for what life might hold. No lingering bitterness, no desire for revenge. Just calm and the knowledge that he had survived betrayal intact, stronger and wiser. He occasionally thought of Clara. He heard she had moved to another city, starting over professionally. There was no resentment, no malice, only acceptance. Life had taken them in different directions, and that was exactly how it should be. One afternoon, David received a message from a friend inviting him to a social gathering. He smiled, realizing he was ready to engage with life fully, without fear or hesitation. Before leaving, he glanced around his apartment one last time, pausing at the living room couch, the same couch where betrayal had once unfolded. He traced his fingers along the surface lightly, a gesture of closure. "Now I can trust the silence," he whispered. David stepped out, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. He walked without looking back, carrying nothing of the past except lessons learned, dignity preserved, and a future he could finally embrace on his own terms. The house was quiet, the storm over. And for the first time in a long while, David felt the lightness of freedom, the simple, profound relief of moving forward without carrying the weight of betrayal. The evening sky was painted in streaks of orange and purple as David walked along the quiet streets near his apartment. The world felt lighter now, almost unfamiliar in its serenity. Months of tension, betrayal, and heartache had passed, leaving him with a profound sense of clarity and freedom. Inside his apartment, the last traces of the old life had been tucked away. The security cameras were gone, the recordings deleted, and the spaces that once felt tainted with suspicion now breathed with possibility. David had chosen peace over revenge, closure over obsession. He sat on the balcony, a warm cup of tea in hand, and let himself reflect. The path he had walked had been brutal, but it had shaped him. He had learned the depth of his own patience, the quiet strength of restraint, and the power of truth. Watching Clara's betrayal had been painful, but exposing it, calmly, strategically, without losing himself, had been empowering. Memories of her and Michael no longer sparked anger or despair. Instead, they served as reminders of lessons learned. Trust must be earned, and when it is broken, reclaiming one's own life is the only remedy. David realized he had been given something invaluable through that ordeal, a second chance to build a life on his own terms. He thought about the people he had connected with during his recovery, friends, family, the support group. Sharing his story, listening to others, offering guidance. These interactions had brought a quiet strength that he never knew he possessed. He had grown not because of betrayal but despite it. A soft breeze carried the faint scent of flowers from the garden below, and David smiled. He wasn't lonely. He wasn't bitter. He was simply free. The weight of suspicion and doubt had lifted, replaced by a quiet optimism for the future. He took out his phone and scrolled through the contacts he had neglected during the storm. Invitations, messages, casual greetings, he began replying, reconnecting. Life was waiting beyond the walls of his apartment, and he was ready to embrace it. For a final moment, he looked toward the empty living room. The couch, the walls, even the faint echoes of laughter from better days, they no longer held power over him. They were simply part of his history. "It's done," he whispered softly. "Everything that needed to be said has been said. Now it's time to live." David stood and stretched, feeling a sense of renewal wash over him. He stepped out into the evening air, letting the city lights guide him forward. No more betrayal, no more hidden truths, no more pain. Only the steady rhythm of life and the freedom to move forward without looking back. As he walked, he allowed himself a quiet smile. He knew that life would continue to challenge him, but he also knew he had survived the storm stronger, wiser, and unbroken. The night was calm. The past was behind him. And for the first time in years, David felt truly at peace. Subscribe, like, comment, and share for more interesting stories.